Her mother gave birth to 8 children in a row, and when the family could barely keep food on the table, her parents saw the children as a burden, so her mother sent away Fanny, the most sensible child of them all. Having no idea what was happening, Fanny asked her mother if she could come and bring her home soon. Just like that, Fanny left her parents behind and headed to her uncle's home at Mansfield Park. By the time she arrived at her uncle's house, it was already the early hours of the next morning. Afraid of disturbing them, Fanny stood outside the front gate through the late autumn night, waiting until dawn. Her aunt came out to greet her, still half asleep, but instead of showing any concern, her aunt blamed her for arriving 2 hours too early. This aunt was the older sister of Fanny's late second aunt. After that second aunt passed away, she had stayed on to help her brother-in-law manage the vast estate. Her aunt introduced Fanny to her uncle by saying, "Their new little maid has arrived." In her aunt's eyes, this poor niece was nothing more than hired help. Even when Fanny's cousins saw her, they looked her up and down with clear disgust. They settled Fanny into a storage room. Fanny asked her aunt how long she would have to stay there. Her aunt replied that if she behaved well enough, it might be forever. Although the storage room at her uncle's house was far better than her own broken-down home, Fanny still could not hold back her sadness at being abandoned by her mother. Just then, a cousin named Edmund walked into the room and kindly checked on her. He was the first person at Mansfield Park to greet her with a smile. When Edmund learned that Fanny missed her younger sister terribly, he brought her paper and a pen, so she could often write letters to the sister far away. From then on, lonely Fanny fell in love with writing. Only by losing herself in imagination could she find even the smallest sense that she existed. In the blink of an eye, Fanny spent 10 years at her uncle's house. Her cousin Edmund stayed by her side as he always had, but whenever her uncle saw the closeness between the two young people, he would often scold Fanny. Edmund taught Fanny to ride using his favorite horse. They also had endless things to talk about. Meanwhile, her uncle was completely worn down by his rebellious eldest son, Tom, so Tom was sent by his father to a remote island to manage the family's business there. That same year, her cousin Maria also got engaged. Although Maria's fiancé looked crude and foolish, his family was loaded, making the match an excellent choice for both families. One day, 2 distinguished guests from Paris arrived at the estate. They were Henry, a charming rich young gentleman, and his sister Mary. At the sight of handsome Henry, the younger cousins Julia and Maria practically lit up. Only at the very end did their aunt reluctantly introduce Fanny. When young people gather together, there are always endless things to talk about. Fanny sat quietly to the side, out of place like an outsider. What they did not know was that the siblings had come to Mansfield Park to find suitable partners among the young people there. But Julia and Maria had already started dressing up carefully for another chance to see Henry. Fanny also noticed that the horse that once belonged to her had now become Mary's personal mount. Seeing Edmund and Mary looking so close left Fanny deeply unsettled. At the same time, Mansfield Park's eldest son, Edmund's older brother Tom, returned from the island. The young people gathered together, hoping to put on the most fashionable kind of play of the moment. Henry asked Fanny for her opinion. Before Fanny could even speak, her aunt cut off the conversation and scolded her for not finishing her work. Her aunt believed Fanny had no right to sit with them at all. Edmund did not want Fanny to feel hurt, so he came to invite her downstairs to rehearse the play with everyone. But unexpectedly, Mary pushed the door open and interrupted their conversation. The young people dressed in strange costumes and rehearsed the play. But just as Fanny came downstairs, she unexpectedly ran into her uncle returning home. Her uncle heard the noise coming from the study. When he saw the younger generation dressed in such improper clothes, he flew into a rage. Tom was once again driven out of the house by his father. Fanny prepared refreshments for everyone's tea gathering. Her uncle and Edmund began discussing the subject of enslaved labor. Her uncle wanted to buy enslaved workers as laborers. Kind-hearted Fanny could not help saying something. Fanny, who had always been treated like heir in the estate, was finally noticed by her uncle. Looking at the niece who had now grown into a young woman, her uncle suddenly thought it was time to find her a proper place in life. At that moment, Henry stepped forward. He praised Fanny with great enthusiasm and suggested throwing a ball for her, so more men could discover her beauty. Fanny felt as if she had become a commodity, as if everyone in the estate wanted to get rid of her. She felt deeply hurt. Henry noticed that Fanny was in low spirits, so he deliberately moved closer to her. This scene happened to be seen by her cousin Maria. Maria felt that Henry was far too frivolous and far too skilled at flirting with everyone. Her heart took a heavy blow, so she suggested to her father that she and her fiancé should hold the wedding earlier. Before long, Maria married her dull fiancé. After the wedding, Maria also took her younger sister Julia away with her. She was afraid that innocent Julia would fall into Henry's hands. From then on, the estate became much quieter. Whenever Edmund and Fanny were together, there was always a pair of jealous eyes watching from behind them. The ball Fanny's uncle had arranged for her took place as planned. After Henry danced with Fanny, he found himself drawn to the melancholy girl before him. The unique aura Fanny gave off was unlike any woman he had ever met. And Edmund, watching their ambiguous moment from not far away, felt a storm of emotions in his heart. That night, Henry waited outside Fanny's window. Even after Fanny blew out the candle, he still lingered there for a long time, unwilling to leave. The next day, he confessed his burning love to Fanny, but Fanny did not give him a direct answer and cleverly changed the subject. A few days later, her uncle told Fanny that Henry was preparing to propose to her. Her uncle believed Henry was wealthy and handsome, the kind of husband countless girls dreamed of, but Fanny did not see it that way. She had no feelings for Henry, and she believed he was nowhere near as reliable as he appeared. But her uncle thought Fanny was overestimating herself, and he kept putting pressure on her. During this time, Edmund and Mary grew closer and closer. They seemed to have already become a couple. Fanny asked Edmund for his opinion, but Edmund said, "The fact that he chose you already proves his character cannot be bad. He can make you very happy, and you will make him a better man." Fanny suddenly felt crushed. Then her uncle said, "I will write to your mother tonight. Perhaps spending some time away from the polished, luxurious life at Mansfield Park will help clear your head." In the end, Fanny still did not give in. She followed her own heart, even if it meant returning to that bare and broken home. She refused to marry Henry. As she was leaving, she felt deeply reluctant to part from Edmund. And Mary, who had taken her place in Edmund's world, was still pretending to comfort Fanny. The carriage gradually moved farther away from Mansfield Park. Fanny returned to the home she had not seen in 10 years, but her mother showed no happiness at all. Nothing in the house had changed, and the dirty dining table looked as if it had never once been cleaned. Only her beloved younger sister was truly happy from the heart to see Fanny arrive. That night, Fanny felt completely lost about her future. She was awake the entire night. The next day, a rapid knock sounded at the door. Fanny went out to check and found that someone had hired people to run an errand. Then romantic fireworks began bursting into the sky. The dazzling light, the moving music, and the surprise brought by white doves made the entire poor neighborhood come alive. Fanny believed this had to be a gift from Edmund, but when her family came out of the church, Fanny discovered that the person she had been waiting for was actually Henry. Faced with the wealthy Henry, Fanny's mother warmly invited him home for dinner, but the disaster of a meal at Fanny's house was impossible for Henry to swallow. Henry wiped the dirt-covered dinner knife with his hand, using a helpless smile to hide the awkwardness. That night, her mother tried to persuade Fanny, saying that having money was nothing to be ashamed of. Living without money was what was truly miserable. Fanny did not want to repeat her mother's life. She tried to accept Henry's love. Seeing the woman he loved soften even slightly, Henry was beyond excited. But after only one night, Fanny regretted her impulsive decision deeply. When Henry came to her house again, she suddenly changed her mind. Henry felt as if he had been played, and he angrily insulted Fanny. Watching Henry storm away in a rage, Fanny did not know whether her decision had been right. The days of poverty passed one after another like this. Just as Fanny was feeling restless and upset, Edmund came to her door. But Edmund had come because he wanted Fanny to return to Mansfield Park. Their eldest cousin Tom had suddenly fallen gravely ill and needed someone trustworthy to care for him. Facing the man before her, Fanny could never refuse anything connected to him. So without hesitation, she followed Edmund into the carriage. During the long journey, they said nothing, but their hands slowly moved closer to each other. Finally, almost without realizing it, Edmund tightly held Fanny's hand. This feeling, impossible to name or explain, left them both drifting somewhere between restraint and desire. Tom's illness looked extremely serious, but Fanny cared for him carefully every single day. When she met Henry again, Fanny faced him with calm composure. Meanwhile, Henry had set his sights on Maria, a married woman. Maria had never truly tasted love in her marriage. Before long, she fell completely for Henry's sweet words, but this shameful scene was witnessed by Fanny. Fanny's panicked expression made Edmund suspicious. He also finally saw Henry's hypocritical true face. The next day, Maria's foolish husband arrived at the estate. He went straight to Maria's room. Looking at the messy scene inside, he sensed the smell of betrayal. Before long, major newspapers published the scandal of the Mansfield Park family. Fanny's uncle made Fanny read those harsh words aloud. Mary, standing nearby, was still making excuses for her brother. Fanny hit back without mercy, but Mary offered an even more shocking suggestion. She said they should let Henry and Maria get married. They could distance themselves from the two for a while, then slowly accept them again. After Tom dies, we can hold a grand wedding for them. Then Maria's reputation will be restored. These words may have sounded thoughtful on the surface, but they exposed her ambition and scheming. At that moment, Edmund finally saw Mary's true reason for getting close to him. He said furiously, "Why are you wishing for my brother to die sooner? For money, for the estate. You and your brother came here to take control of our family fortune. Do you think we are all fools? You were always whispering bad things about Henry in my ear, and now I see it was all for today." Mary left Mansfield Park in humiliation. A few days later, Henry and his sister turned back toward another upper-class social circle, continuing their search for the next person they could use. As for Edmund, he no longer tried to hide what was truly in his heart. He finally confessed to Fanny the feelings he had buried deep inside for so long. Meanwhile, Fanny's younger sister also came to Mansfield Park and took over Fanny's role in caring for Tom, and Tom's health improved day by day. At the end of the story, Mansfield Park is once again filled with peace and harmony. Fanny publishes her own writing, while Edmund becomes a clergyman. Both of them gain the career and partner they truly desire, making them incredibly fortunate. The film is adapted from Jane Austen's novel of the same name. Unlike many of Austen's usual heroines, Fanny is born into poverty and forced to live under someone else's roof. But when facing the temptations of high society, she stays true to herself, holds firmly to her principles, refuses to follow the crowd, and finally gains the life she truly wants.